Good morning. This is a reflection on lesson 268 in A Course in Miracles, and it says, let things be exactly as they are. Or let all things, just let things be exactly as they are. And I keep thinking about how it's a perfect timing. Everything's perfect, right? Exactly as it should be. And then yet there's this giddiness that I feel about like recognizing that everything's perfect just as it is, to the point where perfect takes on no meaning at all anymore, because that's exactly what perfect means: satisfaction or contentedness, or just not even our reflection on things as they are. So those words don't mean anything anymore, but just things as they are. It's perfect. There's no lack, there's fullness, there's nothing missing. I think that's what perfect means. There's wholeness. So yeah, and then so let me think where I want to start. This has been my own personal journey this year, especially with the Course in Miracles, and even before that, but something must have led me to the book to say, no, keep going, and I think about whatever that is, our own intuition, for me, what I was reflecting on this morning, maybe that's where I'll start, is I keep following my own curiosities. What is like the next thing that lights me up? Like, ooh, I want to know more about that. Or, ooh, it's not even about knowing, but there's some felt body sense of, ooh, what's that all about? Curiosity. I think that's the embodiment form that curiosity takes in me, is like, ooh, not like I'll get something from it. It's not about getting or achieving or whatever. It's just something that goes, ooh, and it might be ooh, that's new. Ooh, that's different. It's like, and then I think about like my own journey through life has been about, and I think that's for a lot of us, is like we're attracted to what's new and different from where we've been. Like a lot of us just like thrive on that. Just like, oh, that's something new to experience. That's different. Or it makes me think differently. I even love when thoughts come in about, whoa, that flips everything I thought on its head. And now I think about things differently. And there's some ooh element to that. Like, yeah, break me open. Yeah. Like through my whole life, I feel like there's just been this weird draw toward prove me wrong, please. Like whatever belief system I've built up, like the next thing I weirdly try to do without even realizing it up to the last several years is like, okay, now try to tear it down. Let's poke holes in it. What is that? I don't know, but there's some weird curiosity thing. The thing called curiosity seems to be what is driving me forward toward anything. And do you feel that too? I mean, why else do we do the things we do? Maybe for me, it's like like flip me on my head, break me down, break me open. There's sort of like this, whatever I try to build up, let's tear it down, like it's hard to describe because it's such like a feeling that's sometimes hard to put words to. But what's yours? What fuels you? And sometimes I think in my moments of not leaning into the newness, to the differentness, sometimes that curiosity leads me to like, what would it be like if I did some terrible habit, unhealthy habit for like 2 whole weeks? What would that feel like? So it's not always like something we hold as like some great value or some positive thing. sometimes it's like, ooh, what would that negative thing feel like? And I think in terms of health, positive, negative even stops to really mean anything anymore. So that's where I was reflecting this morning, like things being exactly how they are, how they're meant to be, is that whole like my intuitive like drive toward me fabricating things in my life. Let's fabricate this belief system, or let's latch onto a belief system and then fabricate my life around it, fabricate my thoughts, solidify them, build them up into a structure. Okay, now this peg goes here because that makes sense and that validates the underlying belief or assumption, blah, 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 blah. And it's not like I'm doing that like in those words, but that's what I've done my whole life. Okay, let's see if this fits. Does it feel good? Does it? And every time I do it, down to even like very, very recently, with even all like these practices, I like the healing practices that I go into, and I put air quotes around a lot of things because words are weird these days. So it's like I'm thinking about the idea or the conceptual thing or that most people think of when I say the word healing. So forgive my air quotes. I know it's annoying to a lot of people, but maybe my whole life should be in air quotes right now. I'll just put my name in air quotes. That's so funny. Anyway, so so very recently, like in all, like even my Reiki practice, I went and had this might be story time. I don't know, this ayahuasca, a curiosity led me to an ayahuasca 7-day retreat a few years ago. And that led to me getting more into the energy work. And then that led me to a teacher who has a very firm idea about, in my mind, maybe she doesn't in her mind, but in my mind, what I perceive is there's a very, I want to say rigid, but I don't ascribe that word to her per se, so I don't want to paint that picture, but she's a very firm idea of what Reiki is and what Reiki isn't, and a lot of people do. And then I'm just like, then I tried to build up a practice around it and like what I believe it to be, and some things align with her belief and some things don't. And so I'm like putting my pegs in this structure, and then I'm like, fuck it all. It's energy. Energy doesn't need words. Energy. And so I've come around to like my own authentic, I guess it goes back to authenticity. Like I latch on to like, okay, there's a whole model and a whole education system around certain things. Okay, let me put some faith that there's something to be learned there, like really important. And then I get what I can from it. Does it fit? I throw away what doesn't. And a lot of times, most of it doesn't fit. And then I tear down the whole thing. So that's what I mean by the whole like going towards something and then tearing it down to, I think, the most authentic pieces that still fit with me, whatever I perceive authenticity to be. It's a feeling, it's an energetic, like, does this fit or does it not fit? That's maybe the simplest way to say it right now. So a lot of things right now just don't fit because a lot of them are conceptual or too rigid or too structured. Like they're just like beliefs, which are just really rigid or structured thoughts, right? There's a lot of structure around belief. So anyway, that led me to wondering like, well, then what drives me to keep going? If all that's the case, wouldn't I just want to sit here and be like, which, like there's nothing to do or see. There's just, And then I'm like, well, there's that word that I think that the word curiosity really is the best word I can think of it for right now. And it's seeking too. And seeking ain't such a great thing a lot of times because it keeps me like, oh, the next thing that must give me something. But even the curiosity, I feel like what it's come to now is not so much it's going to get me something that I don't already have. That's kind of like the old way I used to see, like, ooh, next shiny thing, ooh, next trip I'm planning, ooh, this or that. And after 40 some years of experience, I'm like, well, no, there's nothing to be gotten, right? There's there's nothing to be gotten that I don't already have. So that still, but yet, and yet that feeling still exists within me. And I think it's a lot of times nowadays it's a, oh my God, that thing in this physical reality is so beautiful. Or that tree is just like so tree like, there's just that kind of like, ooh. And so the next thing, so that led me to, and I've already mentioned it, I think, in one of these videos, because I haven't talked to really any people in my real life about it except my husband, so I must be talking to you, whoever's out there watching these things. So is a darkness retreat, because I've done so yeah, I go through these experiences, right? I mentioned the ayahuasca, and that was a whole thing. And then but even well before that, a long time before that, I went on a Vipassana retreat. So something in way my history before awakening to things, being very, very much asleep. Even those words don't mean anything really anymore, but I'm just saying them in case they mean something to you, to kind of like paint the picture. So even way back then, I was like, I dedicated a 10, 12-day period while I was overseas to this Vipassana retreat, which is a silent meditation, and went through that experience, and it was profound for me. Why did I know it was something that would like change me or set me down a different path? I don't know. We just have these, and even the word intuition is starting not to mean much to me anymore, so I hesitate to even use that word. But so I think of the word curiosity and the ooh. So I'm sorry. That's just where I am now. It'll change, I'm sure. Everything does. So that whole thing, Vipassana and then ayahuasca and like, other things, just like, ooh, this experience, let's break me open in a different way. Let's explore this thing. Let's explore that thing. Let's tear down that. And then I hear about this thing called darkness retreats. And then I was like, well, I'm sure as hell not paying $4,000 to go sit in a hut somewhere. Because I paid big money to do these other things, and they were great. But I knew intuitively something was like, just freaking do it at home. You can black out some windows and sit in a room, because it's not about what's out there. It's not about the location I'm in. You just know that. That's like, and then I'm like, why am I even doing this if there's nothing to be got that I don't already have? And yet there's this, ooh. I've been silent to the point where it was so profound. Like I didn't want to talk anymore, even after we were allowed to talk. I was just like, words are just, yeah, well, that's a whole separate video. And I love words. And yet, words are words. So then I'm like, well, what will darkness, I know darkness isn't going to get me anything, air quotes. And yet I'm still like, oh yeah, that's juicy stuff. I want in there. and then what I've been really fascinated by, that's really like the whole planting a seed in my ego of like, we're going to do this thing. And then I go into preparation mode, which is fun for me because I love curating things. So it's like, well, I got to get the space ready. I got to black out the windows and try it out. Make sure there's still no light coming in because I don't want to deal with that. I want to make the most of what limited time I have, which I'm doing it from today, midday, after my treatments for my clients are over. I'm going to go home and then get in there. And then come out late Sunday night. And it just so happens it coincides with my husband being gone for the weekend. I'm like, perfect. And so I didn't want to leave anything unprepared for, so that I could just make the most of my time instead of like, oh crap, I forgot about XYZ. Now I'm losing hours And then even all of that I just said is what's been fascinating me. Like this whole like mechanistic, just the machinery of all of this saying, well, make the most of what? Everything can happen is another word, but in a moment. I don't need, oh gosh, I want to make sure I have like over, I don't know, what would it be, 50 some whole hours to just be in darkness. God forbid it's only 47. What would happen? Like, it's ridiculous, right? And so part of me that is fascinated is like, what's gonna backtrack? Okay, I'll say this and then backtrack. So I love the feeling of being timeless without time. So it's not necessarily about darkness. The darkness is like the landscape for letting timelessness emerge. So that's a thought I have about, won't that be cool? Because backtracking to the summer, I did an experiment where I was like camping and I said, okay, for a whole day and a half, I'm going to be without time. I'm not going to look at my clock, blah, blah, blah. And even that was amazing. I loved it so much. It just felt so good. And interesting things happened. And then, but yeah, I could see the movement of the sun and I kind of had a sense of time, right? I went into the room to test it out one final time this morning, make sure all the light wasn't coming in anywhere. And I was like, holy shit, this is the darkest. I don't even know the last time I was in a space that dark. So then I went, ooh, yay, I can't wait. And so that's the fascinating part of me is like, where does this ooh come from? Like what, even though I know there's nothing to be gained, there's nothing to be gotten through this experience. There's just this like, what lights you up? What makes you go, ooh? Is it like, I want to play this video game. I want to go drink that milkshake. I want to like, they're just experiences. And when I think about that, and all my whole life has been about like collecting and, these experiences. Like I use the word collecting as in, oh, I want to bring that into my being. I want to have that experience in me, because I've known through my whole life, whenever I collect an experience, it does something in there, right? Do you feel that? Like, it's not just about saying I did the thing. It's about let's go through it because it plants these little seeds that germinate into things I don't even know what they're going to grow into. New thought patterns, new behaviors, new feelings. They're just, see that word new, like there's the whole unknown is also what makes me go, ooh, I love the unknown. So when I collect these experiences through that mechanism called curiosity, that's what's fun, I think, is that I don't know where it's going to lead. It might lead nowhere. And isn't that interesting too? And so it's just, when I think about the collecting, not everything is a curiosity, right? So what is it that goes, oh yeah, let's get that in here. Let's get it in. It's maybe something, I don't know, but maybe something feels like, oh, there's a space right here that would fit in. You know what I mean? Like there's an opening that hasn't been filled yet, right? I don't feel whole, even though I can sit here and be like, back to the lesson, perhaps. Everything's perfect as it is. There's nothing to do here. And I feel perfectly equanimous about that a lot of times. And yet there's still this inkling of a collecting and a searching and a, ooh, I want that ooh feeling, right? That, what is it? There must be something still to fill up in here. There's something keeping me seeking out these experiences. So I'm just in a place now that makes it feel less like from a place of lack, even though I just said there must be, right? I must feel like, oh, that would be something fun to go through, to collect, to bring it into me, to like feel it, whatever it might do. I don't know. So all of that said, man, this is a long one. I'm sorry. I'm just so I guess the other thing that was funny is, so I went through the Course in Miracles lesson for today. So this is the reflection on yesterday's. And then there are a couple more that I'm like, well, I won't be able to do my reflections because I'm not going to have the phone or anything. So let me look ahead at what the lessons are so that if I want to reflect, just have that in my head or in the darkness, let's do it. You know what's funny? Both of them, for the 2 days I'll be in darkness, are about sight, vision. And then I laughed because of today's lesson. Everything's perfect just as it is. Whatever my path is, it's pretty freaking hilarious that those two lessons have to do with vision and sight, and I will have zero like physical sight. Obviously there's a metaphor there. So that's just a little side note about just the synchronicity of it all, this timing. The other thing I thought about was how everything was conspiring against this weekend in fun ways. So, meaning, okay, the only thing that mattered was that I care so much about my husband and spending time with him that I'm like, okay, I want to do it in a time when he's gone and he's off doing continuing education all weekend, so where he has to stay away from the home in another town. So I'm like, perfect. That's a great weekend. So that's really the only thing I cared about. I don't work on the weekends really, so that wasn't a problem around scheduling clients. The other things that popped up were like, and they're so random, like that weren't normally scheduled for this weekend. One of them is my family does a cooking club and they had to reschedule it from a different weekend to this weekend. I'm like, sorry, I can't go. Even though I could have said, man, that's really important to me. That's obviously way more important to be with loved ones than be with myself in a dark room, right? If you think in terms of like socially important things, socially acceptable important things. And then one was like these friends organized a kayaking trip and I had been wanting to go on one with them all summer, but this summer was crazy and I was never home. So that didn't, and they're finally going well after our normal kayaking season time. So that's another fun thing I had to say no to. I'm like, sorry, I already can't make it. And then my freaking 30-year class reunion happens to be this weekend, which is never this late in the summer. It's usually like in August, and here we are at the end of September, and I didn't even hear about it directly. It was indirectly. So I'm like, this phase of life we're in, where like, if you hear about it, you hear about it. If you don't, you don't. And so I'm like, well, I'm obviously not going to that, even though all year long I was like, and even last year, I was like, oh, maybe I'll actually go to my 30th. I've only been to one. It was my 20th. So I'm like, I'm actually like looking forward to this. And all year long, I'm like, crickets. I don't hear anything about it. And then I hear through my husband, who's from a different town, didn't even go to my school, was like, hey, I saw so-and-so, and they said your reunion was this weekend. I'm like, oh, okay. Guess I'm not going. And even if I had heard about it, would that have gotten in the way? So, and then there were like, I don't know, 5 other things happening this weekend where I was just like, no. Things that I would have said yes to. So that's why like everything was conspiring against this weekend, and yet I still held to it. So I'm like, what is that thing? Who usually I'm just like blowing in the wind, swayed by whatever, and not a lot of conviction for things like that, like it was just me alone in a room, and yet that would have been the easiest thing to say, oh no, I can put that to the back burner, like that's not important. So that's what I'm also curious about, is like, why did I hold so strongly to this time frame? Like what made me clear my schedule? What made me clear my life to do this? I don't know. And I'm loving lately just the being okay with the not knowing. And so, yeah, long-winded video to say that's what I'm really like, ooh, about right now is to go sit in a dark room. I even just, it's going to be like a fast too, because I'm not meal prepping. I just got some basic things that'll keep me alive, and plenty of water. Toothbrush and toothpaste. I have an eye mask so I could go to and from the bathroom without any light. Like, how silly is all of this, right? It's ridiculous. And yeah, I'm so excited for it. And then I get into this mindset of like predicting what it's going to be like. Like, that's my trauma response, is like predicting and hypervigilance. So it's like that mechanism is still in there. So there are these mechanisms that I'm fully comfortable with these days. Like, they don't trigger me anymore, but the mechanisms are still there, right? And that now I see them for what they are. That's my journey where I am right now. Maybe I don't see all of them because I'm sure I still get triggered by certain things. Actually, I do get triggered by certain things. So yeah, I'm not full in the clear yet. But certain things I'm like, yeah, I know how they work, whatever. They don't bother me anymore. But what's interesting to me right now is that they're still operating, right? I hear other people talk about this. Like, that's like where you want to get to. They're still operating, but they don't pull on you. I guess there's some curiosity about me wanting to examine what's left to examine. And I feel like there's some element of, I'm really good at distraction. So there's some element, like, if there's something for me to try to achieve or gain through this process, is to understand more about my own distraction mechanism, my own preparation. Like when I said I was doing preparation, which I know is a trauma response and hypervigilance, is like preparing for every eventual outcome. Like, oh God, what if I'm scared of the dark? What do I do? Like, what if this? Then what will I do? What if this? What will I do? Right? That's trauma response 101. So I know that's still in there, and I've been working with it for a long time now. And yet that was still a thing that burbled up. Like, oh, all this preparation means everything's accounted for. For what? Just existing in a space? So anyway, I'm laughing about it, but I'm very curious, like, So I'm in this, when it all boils down to, I think, is still wanting to examine the unexamined. Maybe that's that curiosity that fuels me, is like examining the unexamined. Ooh. I don't know. That's where I'm at now. Thanks for listening if you still are. The reason I share these is they're like, to me, it's like I would share it even if no one was watching. Because anyway, maybe nobody is anyway, but because I know that to me, it more authentic comes out than if I were to write. I've been a writer my whole life. I love writing and that whole process, but it feels slow, and I feel steps removed from the authenticity that comes out versus doing this. And that's just where I'm at now. At some point, because there'll be days now where I'm like, I don't need to say a damn thing. But I know I committed to this Course in Miracles. And it's not just about you might think like, well, commitment for the sake of commitment. You don't want to have any drudgery about it, right? Well, no, because every time I start, I surprise myself. There's usually something in what I'm saying that is a surprise to even myself, right? And that's, I think back to that examining the unexamined is still what makes me go, ooh, who am I? And that's what all the things, all the wisdom traditions through the world is like, to know thyself, like what's left in here to examine while I'm on this earth. Ooh. So That's what it all, that, boy, this was quite a lesson for me. And then the ones about sight will be interesting to reflect on after I get out of being sightless for 50 some hours. So have a good day.